Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we have InsightWorks with us, and they will be presenting on shop floor data collection. And we just ask that if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them into the questions box, and we will get them called out and answered for you at the end of the webinar. And also, we do record all of our webinars, so this webinar will be recorded and available on our website later this week for you to review again, or if you'd like to share it with any of your other colleagues and friends. Today's presenter is Mark Hamblin, and he is the president of InsightWorks, and also he sits on the NAV board of advisors. Many of you already know Mark or have heard him speak. So at this point, I'm going to pass things over to Mark.
Hi, good morning, everyone. All right, today we'll be going through and talking about shop floor data collection. So specifically how we can capture labor and material information from the shop floor, using automated data collection tools. Before we get into that, I've got a brief presentation to sort of go through and set the stage, and then we'll spend the next half hour after that looking at how the software actually works. So to start with, a little bit about InsightWorks. We partner with Innovia to deliver these types of applications for warehouse management or shop floor control and in other areas within the NAV world. And we're a global supplier. We're based in Canada. Most of our business is in North America. We do have resources working throughout North America and now Europe. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. What I do want to spend time on is actually talking about the shop floor insight product. So this is a product that bolts into NAV, doesn't require any external database or anything like that. It's built right into the system and allows you to do a number of things that you don't get with the standard NAV product. So I'll briefly touch on these, and then we'll actually have a look at them in the presentation and the demo. So beyond simple labor capture on the shop floor, we can do things like time and attendance, payroll calculations, and payroll integration. And what that means is we can have people clock in with a dedicated time clock interface running on a tablet or a PC or whatever, and clock out for breaks and out for the end of the day and everything. And then we send that into the system, and we can calculate overtime or shift premiums or things like that, and then send that summarized data to your payroll system, regardless of what that is. So that means from the time somebody in the shop clocks in the morning till they get their pay stub 2 weeks later, nobody has to touch that information. It's all handled automatically. And I keep mentioning shop employees. The time and attendance and even the labor capture can work for office personnel as well. So if you have an engineering department or just office staff that are either hourly or salaried, you can still use the same thing for time and attendance and tracking what they work on from within NAV. We do have the ability to do some shift scheduling and recurring shift schedules, so you can sort of manage your manpower for the shop a little more seamlessly within the system. And the one the one we're mostly going to cover today is the barcoded labor collection. So again, that allows us from the shop floor to scan barcodes to capture our actual times for the shop employees. We can do, of course, more than that. So we've got quality inspections. We're able to go in and you can create your own inspection checklists and then execute those inspections on the shop floor and record that quality information with the production order. And a number of other things like work instructions and dispatch lists and consumption and output, all of those sorts of things. The link documents is kind of nice. You can attach drawings and things like that to your production orders or to your items, and those are now visible on the shop floor. And normally when we do this, we use a tool called NAV Extender, which allows you to drag and drop into any page within NAV without actually modifying anything. So it's a free tool, you download it, and now you can do drag and drop documents into NAV. We've got a safety logbook as well. That's kind of an underappreciated portion of the software, but if you do have a safety program you need to manage, this is a good tool. It can log incidents, hazard assessments, fire drills, whatever you want. So it's a nice tool, and it does integrate with the system. So if you have an injury event on first aid on the shop floor, you can record that, and then you can log that within the safety logbook. The other thing I'll mention down here, the visual scheduler. So that says Q2 2018, so that was released. It is available now, and I'll actually show you what that looks like when we go through the demo. All right, now that's sort of the software capabilities. The way this works is, typically on the shop floor, you'll have various terminals sitting out there. So these will be PCs or laptops or thin clients, maybe tablets, depending on whether the size of the screen meets your requirements, or industrial touch screens. A lot of what we're seeing now is the Chromebox, or what we're recommending. They're not a sealed unit, but they have no moving parts, so they can withstand sort of dusty environments and things like that. Maybe $150 for one of those. You slap it out there, plug in a monitor, and you're pretty much good to go. So these are some of the hardware options. And the more terminals you have out on the shop floor, the better, because you don't want people walking halfway across the shop to be able to scan a barcode. And just a few sort of screenshots of what those look like. So this is a Chromebox. It's about 4 inches square, roughly there. Stick PC and industrial touchscreen. The scanner that we use is basically what you see here. So something along those lines, where people will have that scanner attached to the terminal to actually scan the barcodes. Right. Now, I thought I'd just bring up this. This is sort of a sample terminal. When this picture was taken, this had been out there for about 10 years in the shop, literally speaking, and you can see there's about 10 years worth of dust on that little rubberized keyboard there. But this is the scanner they're using. That's a little thin client computer in the background. And this is a laminated sheet with activity codes like the non-productive time, like sweeping or first aids, or assets and work centers, all the sort of things that are common to this particular terminal. And I'll show you how that works as well when we get into it. Anyway, that's an example of how one client has actually set up their shop terminal. All right, now we talked about the software and the hardware. Both of those are part of the project cost. So when you budget it, you have to budget for both sides of it. And once you actually have an idea of what it's going to cost you to do, and you can talk to your Innovia rep to get that sorted out. Once you have a good idea of what it's going to cost you, we have an ROI calculator that you can go in and plug the numbers in and see what you're going to get back out of the system. And this is online. You can go to the website and look for the ROI calculator and plug it in, or if you want an Excel spreadsheet, your Innovia rep can get you that. And what we typically see, you can plug in all your details here, and what we typically see is a payback period of about 6 months on most of these projects. So if you're doing manual time cards today, you can reasonably expect that the system will pay for itself after about 6 months, maybe a year, but very quick payback period on the system. So it's a very attractive investment for you for the shop. All right, now I'm about to jump into the demo, but before I do that, let's talk a little bit about what I'll be showing you. These are the barcodes I'll be scanning. So there's something we call a badge, an employee ID badge, that I use to unlock the terminal, right? So to clock in, basically log in. And this is generated out of NAV. And really, it's the barcode we're interested in. So if your employees have existing ID badges or whatever, we slap a barcode on the back, and that's what they scan to unlock the terminal. For time and attendance, we have facial recognition coming, and we can also integrate with things like key fobs or fingerprint scanners or whatever you want. But typically, the barcoded badge is what people use. Over here is a portion of a traveler document. So again, this is a barcoded data collection, which means we need barcodes out on the shop floor in order to record our time. So this particular one, we've got one barcode per operation, and you'll see me scanning that in a moment. And again, if you have an existing traveler document, we can just put these barcodes on that existing traveler document, or you can use sort of the sample one that comes with the system, either way. We do have the ability to work without barcodes to a certain extent. So for touch screens, you can sort of go paperless if you need to, or if you have something like maybe a serial number on a component and you don't really have a traveler, we could scan that and figure out which operation you're working on automatically, those types of things. But generally, we prefer having a traveler document out there that you scan. All right. Now, that's basically it. So let's actually jump in and have a look at what this thing looks like. So the first thing I'll cover really quickly is the time clock interface. And this is if you want to use it for time and attendance. You don't have to. You don't have to use this tool at all. But what this allows me to do is very easily and quickly clock in the morning when the employees come in. We do have the ability, if you have a webcam on there, if you're running this on a tablet, we can take a photo of the person as they clock in and clock out. And then on the approval screen, you can actually see that employee's picture, of who clocked in and out. And this is also the tool that will have the facial recognition enabled for it in the next release. But the way it works, if you're just using barcodes, employees sort of, line up, file out of the change room. And as they walk past the terminal, they just scan their badge. So I'll do one slowly. So I scanned in Mary, and you can set it up to time out after a few seconds. But then I've got, 3 or 4 people that are going to scan in immediately after her. So I'm going to do this person, then this person, then this person, and so on. And that one was an invalid badge, so it gave me an error message. But that's how quick it works. People just walk past the terminal and they're clocked in for the day. Right? So very simple punch clock interface. Now, once they're out on the shop floor, this is the interface they're going to see. So it runs in a browser. So it'll run on a tablet, as I mentioned, or anything else. If you have an old a closet full of Windows XP boxes or something like that, you can throw them out on the shop floor and go to town. But it runs on the browser, and an employee will walk up to this and scan their badge to unlock the terminal, and then record what they're working on. So I'll go through that process, a very simple one where I'm going to unlock the terminal, indicate what I'm working on, and then go and do my work. So I'll walk up, I'll scan my badge, it unlocks the terminal, it shows me my time card. Now this is a time card from later, so I'm going to basically end my shift here, and I'm going to scan my badge, and I'm starting a new shift. So essentially this is what would happen first thing in the morning. I'd scan my badge, and I'd start a brand new time card. So I've clocked in this morning at 9:12 my time, and I've done nothing, so I've got a blank time card. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to indicate what I'm working on. So I'll grab one of those shop traveler documents. I'm going to scan an operation on it, and it adds that to my time card. So I'm now clocked into this operation, and now I go off and I do my work. All right, so the screen will lock after a configurable amount of time, 30 seconds or whatever, or I can scan my badge to lock the screen, or if somebody comes up behind me and scans their badge, it'll just flip over to them. But I'm going to scan my badge to lock the screen, and go off and do my work. An hour later or whatever it is, I come back and I unlock the terminal again, and I scan the next activity I'm working on, and in this case it's going to be a cleanup activity. So now I'm doing some sweeping instead of a productive activity. So we can track those non-productive times. You can create whatever codes you want, like as I mentioned earlier, first aid or waiting for work, or toolbox meeting, or whatever kinds of codes you want to set up if you want to track their time to that level of detail. If you don't, that's fine. If I have 10-minute gaps on my time card here and there, no problem. The system will automatically fill those up with sort of a default non-productive time if you want. But that's basically it. Now you'll notice here it automatically calculated that elapsed time on the previous one. I actually do have this set up to allow me to edit that time. You can turn that on or off, so I can just use the arrow key on the keyboard. You don't need to use the mouse to get around, and I could edit that. But that's an option you can turn on or off, so you don't have to allow employees to edit their time cards. You could make that just a supervisory activity. The other thing you'll notice is it's in hours, so this is 0.01. If you have shorter operations, like let's say you have a sawing operation or drill or something like that, where it's it's typically 5, 6, 7, 10 minutes of work, you don't necessarily want to see that time as a decimal, like 0.1 or whatever. So you can, on a per employee or per work center basis, you can change it so that I can log time in minutes or seconds even, or days, whatever you like, and it'll automatically convert that appropriately. So in this case, I've got it to hours. Now, when I scanned that next operation, it clocked me out of this one. But we do have the ability to allow employees to be clocked into more than one operation at the same time. So that's great if you have, CNC machines or machines that run, independently of labor time. So I have one operator that's running 2 machines. I can clock into both those production orders simultaneously and manage them independently. And I can also capture that machine time independently. So if I spend an hour on a machine, but it runs for 5 hours on its own, I can capture that 5 hours of machine time plus that 1 hour labor time in the system. And if you want to get fancy, if you have PLCs on that equipment, we can capture that runtime directly from the machine as well, along with cycle counts and everything else. Okay. The other mode we have is a sort of a batching mode. And that's useful if we have multiple production orders that are being worked on simultaneously. So for example, you have a laser cutter or a paint booth or something like that, where you are working on multiple production orders at the same time. What I can do is I can scan those 5 or 10 or whatever production orders in all at the same time, and it won't clock me off. And then when I'm done that work, I scan off that batch and it'll automatically split the elapsed time across all those production orders proportionally. So the larger production orders get more of the time than the smaller production orders. So that's ideal for, like I said, paint booths or dipping tank or laser cutter or whatever, where you do maybe do multiple production orders at the same time. All right, so that's the basics of time entry. Again, if you have any questions on that, just put that in the chat window or raise your hand. I do see a question there. How do you do this? How do you control whether it's setup time or run time? Well, there's 2 barcodes on the production order. The one I showed you, the Traveler, and that detail only had the one barcode that had runtime. But you can, when you run the report, you can also include a barcode for setup time. And when I scan the setup time barcode, it'll record time against setup time instead. And there's color coding options you can turn on that highlights which field you're working on. So if I scan the setup time, it'll highlight the setup time field, so I know that I'm recording time against setup time instead of runtime. You can also color code the actual time card lines here, these individual lines, to indicate which ones are active. So if I'm working on 3 production orders simultaneously, but I've got 10 lines on this, I know exactly which lines are active and I haven't clocked off yet. So we've got the color coding and we've got the highlighting on the fields. All right. Now, as I mentioned, we can track that labor time independently of the machine time. Typically, that's done. You can set up a machine to capture that time independently, and we can go to the PLC. I'll answer that question in a little more detail at the end. All right, so that's the basics of time capture. I essentially, to recap, as an employee, I walk up to the terminal, I scan my badge, I scan the activity I'm going to work on, and I wander off, I do my work, I come back, and I scan the next activity. And as far as activities go, we see production orders and non-productive time. I can also do assets. So, oops, I was in the chat window on on the webinar, so somebody got a barcode in their chat window. Anyway, in here, I can scan fixed assets, and I can scan service orders, and I can scan jobs. So if you use any of those, we can capture time against it. So service, fixed assets, non-productive time, so any activity code you want to create, and production orders. Now, what I'll do is I'll now show you a little bit on the rework side of it. So it's actually very important on the shop floor to be able to capture what the root cause of rework is. I harp on this a lot. I used to be in operations management, and rework is a very expensive thing to deal with. If I have an hour of rework, that's really costing me at least 3 hours worth of time, right? So 3 hours of cost for an hour of rework. I've got the hour it takes me to do the rework, the hour it took me to do the original work that's wasted, the hour of lost opportunity cost where I could have been doing something more productive other than rework, the time for QC to find the issue, to document it, to record it, all of those sorts of things. So being able to easily capture what's causing that rework is very, very important. And the way it works in this system is, let's say I'm on a specific activity. So I'm doing this chain assembly here, and I'm having to rework this because something happened. I did it once, I sent it off to the next operation, it came back to me for rework for whatever reason. And I still want to record all my time against this operation, this production order, because I need that cost to be associated with it. But I don't want somebody to come up to me and say, hey, why did it take you 2 hours to do this instead of 1 hour? Why are you working so slow? I want to record this as exceptional time. So what I do is I scan what we call the root cause barcode. And in this case, I'm going to blame engineering. So this would be one of those barcodes that's, on that laminated sheet at the terminal where I can come in and, scan that. And now you'll notice here, this is flagged as engineering rework. And what this allows me to do is now report on this. So whatever time goes into this engineering rework, I can now go in and see, all of that rework based on the root cause code. So I'll show you a little bit on the reporting now. We use Jet reports, so this is Jet Express, it's free system. There's a number of reports that you can run out of NAV, but for these sorts of analysis reports, it's all sort of done through Jet. So, the basics like, productivity, gives me my productivity by employee or by specific production order or job, and by date range, we can see productivity. This is the one that we would use for rework. So if I had rework broken out into multiple root cause codes, I could very easily see a chart here that shows me where all my rework is coming from. So on a weekly or monthly basis, I go and look and see, okay, is it engineering, or is it material defects, or is it equipment failure? What is costing me that extra money for rework? And that alone helps bring your costs down in the shop fairly significantly. And then if you're using time and attendance, we can show you overtime versus regular time. We can log by employee or time range or, production order or whatever, the amount of time spent per month, those types of things. So there's a number of reports. There's also one for costing as well, another workbook for costing and that sort of thing. So all of these reports are available, and it's actually extremely easy to do reporting out of the system. So if you want to create your own Jet reports or your own Excel reports or your own NAV reports, it's actually very easy to report out of the system. Okay, now that's all fine and good. This is a typical case, where an employee is going to walk up, he's going to scan 2 barcodes to track his time. He's going to unlock the terminal with his badge, he's going to scan a production order barcode, like an operation barcode, and that's it. So very easy for people to adopt and use. There's no magic. You don't have to make sure you're in a certain field before you scan or any of that stuff. You're scanning one barcode and you're done. Beyond that basic time collection capability, and it's actually fairly advanced time collection capability, but beyond that capability, we also have over here on the right-hand side, you'll notice a couple of things. We've got the bill of materials and we've got the work instructions. I have these visible by default, but you can hide them as well. And the bill of materials can just be informational use only, or you can actually do point of use consumption at this point. So I can come in here, and this is nice if you have lot numbers or serial numbers that you're consuming on the shop floor. So, I have a rack of parts and I'm grabbing, whatever, something that has a lot number or serial number. Instead of writing that down and handing it in, I can actually scan that barcode or just manually type in that lot number and quantity, and I can do that consumption right from the shop floor, right? So, or if you're using back flushing or something like that, this is still useful for doing scrap, so I can record any additional scrap that I've used and things like that. Okay. So that's the consumption side. We also do output. You'll notice on the time card line here, we can enable or disable, all of these buttons through configuration within NAV, or all these edit boxes. This is useful if I'm doing, intermediate output, so I want to track piece counts at individual operations, but we can also do finished goods output. And the finished goods output lets me specify serial numbers and lot numbers and things like that, and actually record that output, to finished goods. And we have, fairly often we have people that want to spit out labels. As soon as they do the output, they want to spit out a label or whatever for that product, so we can put that in as well. So that's sort of the consumption and output side of it. So point of use consumption and shop floor output. Down here, we've got the work instructions. So these are nice for standard instructions. So if you have standard instructions on an operation, like use this jig and do this, these are the assembly instructions, those sorts of things, you can put all of those in here. These are just standard routing comments in NAV. And we can also have order specific instructions. So if you have comments on the production order, or often that come from the sales order, those can show up as well. So both customer specific and standard instructions that you want to place in NAV will show up here as well. Now, if that's not enough, if there's not enough room here to show the appropriate detail, we can also go in and show record links. So record links are, all the documents you have attached to either the item or to the production order. And you can actually even do it at the operation level as well. But we come in here, and this would allow me to do things like attach that assembly diagram or an inspection checklist, and then the employee can basically open that assembly diagram electronically on the screen, review it, zoom in, whatever they need to do, and then close it and come back in here. So, and again, this is nice because we can do drag and drop within NAV to add these in. So if you're not using any sort of record links or document management within NAV now, I could very easily just open up a production order, drag and drop a drawing or an attachment for my email into NAV, and then it's immediately available here on the shop floor. Okay, so that's the links. There's also item picture, which in some cases might be nice, but it's there if you want to use it. Quality inspections is another one. Let me just hide that. So the quality inspections allows you to create an inspection checklist and then record the results of that inspection from the shop floor and from within NAV. So on the shop floor, we deal specifically with production orders. Quality is only for production orders in the shop floor interface. But in NAV, I can assign quality inspections to receiving documents, to shipping documents. So, is a serial number tag on the unit, is the warranty card in the box, whatever, those types of things before I can ship it. I can even assign those inspections to assets or people or whatever the heck you want to do. Now, this particular one, I created one I just called generic, and it's just got, a bunch of generic data types, but these would actually be your tests. So this could be ID, OD, length, power draw, temperature, whatever kinds of tests you wanted to create in here, you could do. And you create those in NAV, of course. And then they can be specific to an item, to a work center, to a product, or any combination of those. You can set up that filter to assign it to any combination. And then from within the shop floor, I can actually go in and I can record the results of that test in here. All right, so like I said, I just created one that's got a bunch of different data types to illustrate the types of data entry you can do. So for example, I can have drop-down lists. I can have specific constraints on that, like I can't enter, negatives on this or whatever. And I can also do things like have tolerances. So this is between 3 and 5. If I enter, 31, that's going to be a fail for me. So these are all the types of things that we can enter. And these test results, as I mentioned, are stored in NAV against that production order, even that specific operation, and by lot number and serial number as well, if you like. And often we get questions, can I have this, pop up every 10% of my output, or, those types of things. And yes, we can. We can put in, business logic that's custom to you that forces people to do these quality inspections at certain intervals or under certain constraints. All right, so that's the quality inspection module. And that's, for sort of these fact boxes or these panes on the right-hand side, you can hide or show those, you can configure them, and they can be per employee or per workstation as well. So for example, a QC guy might, only see this and they wouldn't see the BOM and the work instructions or anything else, and that's how they'd work, all right? Now, so far we've been scanning barcodes. We also have the ability to, as I mentioned earlier, do a little bit more paperless access to the system. So I can set it up so that when I scan my badge to clock in, instead of seeing my time card by default, what I see is a dispatch list. And the dispatch list shows me all the work that's coming up at my work center in the next little while. And beyond just showing that, we can also have assignments. So I can be a lead hand or a supervisor, and I can actually assign work to individual employees. Now, this particular one is actually filtered to a specific work center. So all of these are for one specific work center. So when I scan in, let's say I'm at a boring mill or something, I scan in there, I only see the work that's coming up for that particular piece of equipment. And then from there, I can simply tap on the screen. This is ideal if you have touch screens. I can tap on that screen, and then I can tap clock on, and I can start my work. All right, or I can do consumption and all that kind of stuff from here as well. So we do have the ability to show the upcoming work, and using a touch screen, or if you have to a mouse, come in here and select the work I want to do and clock on. Okay, so that can be handy. It can be good for informational purposes, just what work do I have coming up today, who is it assigned to as an individual employee. And that assignment, by the way, is at the employee level, so I can still have a production order that runs on machine center 120, but it's assigned to Joe, and another production order that runs on machine center 120 is assigned to Fred, or something like that. So we can do that, and an individual employee can come in here and decide, I'm going to work on that next, and they can actually take it, and you'll see now they've got their specific assignments down here. So supervisor can set these up, or an individual employee can come in and grab the work they want to do. Okay. So that's the sort of tabular style dispatch list. We also have another style of dispatch list, which is a production schedule as well. So if I flip over this one, because it's got more interesting data than the other one, but it's the same thing. We're now in the production schedule. This is a graphical dispatch list, and what that means is, I can have this also filtered down to, say, Work Center 100. So I work at Work Center 100. All I would see is the work that's coming up at my particular work center for that day. So that can be filtered as well. And from here, I can see, okay, yeah, today I need to start on this. I can hover over that with the mouse and see the details. Or if I'm using a touch screen, I can tap on it and it shows me the details down at the bottom here. And so this is nice because now I have a graphical view of what's happening. And this is just a dispatch list. I can clock on from here, just like I could with that tabular one. I can do the consumption and output and everything else. And, I can say, yeah, I want to see the bill of materials and the quality inspections and all that kind of stuff on here as well. So all of that, it's just like a normal dispatch list. The difference is I can now see things graphically. And if I'm a warehouse supervisor, what it also allows me to do is come in here and move things around. So let's say, today is, Friday or something. Actually, Monday is a better example. I come in Monday morning and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, we don't have the material for this particular operation. I need to, move this out to tomorrow, or, somebody called in sick. And incidentally, when I tapped on that, it shows me in green all the other operations that are related to the one I've selected. All right, so we can come in and see, everything that's going to be impacted by this particular one. But I come in here, I'm a supervisor, I say, you know what, this one can't start today, I'm going to move this one over to start on Tuesday. So I can actually just drag and drop that, and I'm going to start that at 7 a.m. on Tuesday, drop it, and what it'll do is it'll reschedule all the other operations accordingly. And this database actually happens to be a little slow. Normally this takes about a second or so to run, but it'll come in and it'll reschedule all of those operations for me, and now I've moved everything else. Okay, so, and that incidentally is based on employee permissions. So if I'm not a supervisor, I wouldn't be able to do that movement, and I'd just be looking at this in a view-only mode. Right. So this isn't intended to sort of be a longer-term planning tool, though you can actually go out and look at it, a year in advance if you really want. What it's meant for is really that shop floor supervisor to come in and be able to move things around on the fly as required and update the schedule for specific work centers and specific production orders. So graphical dispatch list combined with a bit of a scheduling whiteboard that allows them to move things around. All right. Now, the last thing I'll show you is a little bit of the stuff in NAV itself. where, I've recorded my time. So I'm an employee, I've got, I've got all my time recorded in the system. And now a supervisor is going to come in and do the approvals on that time. Technically, approvals are optional. You don't really have to do them, but clearly very recommended. We want to make sure that, people have entered their time correctly, especially if you allow them to manually type in time. But we want to make sure that, everything's good before it goes off to payroll. So the way that works, that can run in the web browser as well. So if you have a supervisor out there, doesn't really have a desk or anything, he can just come into the web browser and he can go into the approval screen. I'm going to show it to you in, the Windows NAV client here. But the supervisor would come in, they'd go into time card approvals, and when they come in, they would see all the time cards for the people that report to them. So if I had 10 people reporting to me, I'd see 10 time cards in this list, one for each person. Now, I don't have many people reporting to me, but I do happen to be super user, so I can actually come in here and show everybody's time card. So here's all the time cards in the system, and I'm also going to show open time cards. So this would, by showing open time cards, it'll also show me the ones that are active, including the one we were just working on. Now, from a supervisory point of view, those things that I just turned on, they'd never do that. They'd simply open this screen. Here's the 10 time cards they need to approve, and away they'd go. This top list here shows me the employee, how many hours they've got on that time card, when they clocked in, when they clocked out. And then from a payroll perspective, we can apply rounding rules to it. So you notice here I clocked in at 9:12. These guys are really nice. They rounded down so that it says I clocked in at 9 instead of 9:12. But that information is sort of at the the time card level, so I can see very quickly how many hours they worked, that sort of thing. And then down here are all the details about the time cards. So you'll notice these are all the things that I had scanned in the shop floor interface. Now, from a supervisor perspective, what they're going to do is come in and they're going to look for anything that's red. And so if I have 10 people reporting to me, hopefully I have no red time cards, but maybe I have 1 or 2 red time cards. And that red is there because we've got what we call a validation error. And what I can do at this point is look over here, and it tells me what the issues are. So first of all, I recorded 8 minutes worth of time, but I was actually only clocked in for 7 minutes. We've got a total time on the time card is less than the hours I was supposed to work. So I was supposed to be in there 8 hours. I've worked less than an hour. And then we've got a bunch of issues with the lines themselves. So down here on the lines, you'll notice we've also highlighted specific fields that are problematic. So in this one, it tells me there's no setup time. The production order called for setup time. I didn't enter setup time, so I probably scanned the runtime barcode instead of setup time. A supervisor could actually correct that if he wants. Down here, I'm missing both, right? I don't have setup time or runtime. So again, a supervisor could come in here and say, oh yeah, that guy forgot to clock out again or whatever, and he can actually make those adjustments right here on the time card. And when I do that, you notice this thing is still red, even though I've got time in it now. And the reason is the new message is, there's only supposed to be 15 minutes on that, and I spent an hour on it. But in this case, I know, okay, it was rework, so an hour is probably fine. Or if this was regular production time, maybe I want to switch it to rework because they spent an hour on it instead of 15 minutes on it. So there's a number of tools here for doing that. I can send notifications off to payroll if I want. I can see sort of the time over he was very busy on Wednesday there. So I can see all the time spent during that week, that sort of thing. So from an approval perspective, it's very quick. If I've got 10 people reporting to me, 5 minutes, I've got my approvals done, and that's now available for payroll to run the routines to calculate the overtime and everything else. All right. So I think that puts me about 3 minutes ahead of schedule, 3 or 4 minutes. So maybe I'll take that time just to briefly talk about the safety logbook. The safety logbook, like I said, it's sort of an underappreciated component of the system. But what it does is it allows me to track, in this case, this was a lost time injury, but you can set up all your codes. These are the sort of default ones that come with the system, audits and injuries and all that kind of stuff that you might have. And then track all the details for that in sort of a, using the HR terminology and sort of codes and everything else. So you know, you can track injuries or whatever. You can track the employees involved with it. You know, if you've got government claims and all that kind of stuff, you can track that in the system. You can track follow-up actions, you know, related logs like follow-up training, those sorts of things. So it's actually a nice little tool, especially if you're managing, you know, a lot of this detail in Excel or something like that today. You know, you can use this, and it integrates with all the same employees and activities that you have within the shop floor interface. And you've got log reports for, you know, government files and, you know, even things like, you know, listing off whoever's certified on certain skills and those sorts of things. So fairly nice little tool. All right, I think I'm going to call it quits there. That gives us, you know, a little extra time for questions or anything else, or just finish a few minutes early so you can kind of get on with your day. So with that, are there any questions?
Yes, Mark, we do have a few questions. The first one is, are the fields runtime and setup time capturing machine time or labor time in case of operator running multiple machines?
Both. So they can capture either, right? So we can capture that machine time independently of the labor time. So I can have an employee recording their labor time, and I can have that machine recording its machine runtime. And those two are independent. Most people, you know, if it's a one-to-one, like I've got an operator running a machine and he's always at that machine while it's running, it's going to be, you know, the operator time is going to include that machine time. But you can segregate those out, so I can record the machine time completely independently of the labor time. And that's also useful if you have things, you know, running dark, like running overnight. We can capture that machine time independently.
Okay. Next question. Does it post consumption and output from the shop screen?
Yeah, so it doesn't by default. It puts those that data on the consumption journal and the output journal, and then somebody in the office would post it, or you might have a job queue that posts it periodically. The reason for that is twofold. One, most people want to review what their shop personnel have entered before they actually post it, and number two, it has an impact on the Microsoft licensing. So each terminal out on the shop floor that's active uses up a limited user license. So that means if I have 10 terminals out on the shop floor and 3 are in use, that we use up 3 limited user licenses for as long as sort of somebody's standing in front of that terminal. If you have it post automatically, so if you have it post as soon as I do the consumption, what that's going to do is it's going to require a full user license from Microsoft, because Microsoft doesn't allow you to post with a limited user. Okay. Now, there are some, I'm just going to go in here just a sec. There are some controls on here. So if I go into consumption, and let's say I come in and I was supposed to enter, you know, 10 and I accidentally entered 100, you know, it'll warn me on the shop floor that I screwed up, and it will help prevent errors. So if you do want to do that sort of automated posting through a job queue or something like that, then, you know, you can be fairly safe in that the data coming in is probably correct. All right. All right. Hopefully that answers the question. Anything else?
Yes, we got a couple more.
Oh, cool.
Can you run the Gantt from NAV?
That scheduling whiteboard? No, this is run from the shop client. So you can run this, of course, you know, on your Office PC, and it's just a web, you know, web browser link. So you can actually run this from within the office, but it doesn't load up in NAV itself. And the reason, part of the reason is we don't want people to, you know, necessarily use this as a longer term planning tool. The idea is this is a shop floor tool. Supervisor is going to come in here. He's going to kind of do some reactive scheduling, reactive moving things around, you know, as the conditions on the shop floor change. You can use it as a planning tool, but you know, you would just basically run it in the browser on the from your office.
All right. And do you integrate with ADP?
Yes, so we have, we can integrate with any payroll system out there, like Paychex or whatever. And we do have native export for ADP in the system, but it'll work with anything. So you can build up essentially a text file export from the system, and that'll send the data out. And that is just sort of a plug-in type of scenario. So you just, if you have a custom payroll provider or something like that, you can just basically plug in the export format, and that'll send it out to a text file for you. And speaking of payroll, I will, it's sort of off topic from the question, hopefully we'll have time to cover it, but that payroll adjustment, again, you can set up payroll rules based on your shift patterns or anything else, and payroll people can come in on a daily and weekly basis, and I probably don't have any, it's unlikely I have any overtime adjustments, but it'll bring in all those overtime adjustments that need to be made. They can review them, and they can execute those adjustments. So it's all really automated in how it calculates the overtime and everything else. And then when they export it to payroll, it's going to take all that calculated overtime or any other rules that you have, and it's going to summarize that and send it to payroll. So if you're exporting to ADP, you don't have to first go into Excel and figure out who gets overtime and who does it. It's all done, and it just goes to payroll directly. And I lied, I'm still going to go tangent here. I will briefly, I mentioned shift patterns, so we'll briefly talk about a shift pattern here as well. So this is a shift pattern. You can have as many shift patterns as you want, and then per shift pattern, and this can be overridden at the employee level as well. So you could have a supervisor maybe that's on this shift pattern, but they have different payroll rules than the regular employees. But you can set up your payroll rules on the shift pattern level, and you can also do the automatic break adjustment. So you don't have to have people clock out for breaks if you don't want. It'll automatically deduct that time from the production orders or whatever they're working on when that break kicked in. Okay, and you can set up multiple breaks, like they might have 2 15-minute paid breaks and 1 half-hour unpaid break. All of that kind of stuff you can set up on the shift pattern. Okay, I mentioned that because it's somewhat payroll related. All right. Sorry, any other questions on that?
No, I believe that's all that we have. If anyone does have any, please get them into the questions box and we will get them answered for you. It'll take just a few moments. Thank you, Mark, for presenting, and thank you everyone attending today. We appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time this morning. And again, if you have any questions, just get a hold of your Innovia rep, and they'll be happy to answer them for you.
All right, well, just a reminder, this has been recorded, so it will be available on our website, innovia.com, later this week for you to review again or share with any of your other colleagues and friends. And be sure to visit our website on the events page. We're always updating our webinars. So we do have one coming up with Innovia's Tom Dorn. He's going to be presenting on NAV 2018 Tips and Tricks on June 19th. So if you're interested in that webinar, please register, or any of our other webinars. Thanks again, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Mark, for presenting, and we look forward to seeing you on one of our next webinars. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. All right.